Okay, let's think about this for a second. What happens when an entire country, pushed right to the very edge, decides to vote for, well, for more pain? Not for easy promises, but for tough times ahead. That's exactly what we're going to get into with Argentina's incredible austerity vote.
So, that's the big question, right? Why on earth would a whole nation vote for economic hardship? I mean, it kind of flies in the face of everything we think we know about politics. To even begin to get our heads around this, we have to go back and look at the sheer scale of the crisis that forced Argentina's hand.
And when we say crisis, we're not talking about a small downturn. This was a full-blown economic earthquake. You could feel the tremors everywhere, in every home, every shop, on every single street corner.
Get ready for this number because it really tells you everything you need to know. We're talking about annual inflation hitting 200%. I mean, just let that sink in. 200%. That's a number that doesn't just hurt, it completely shatters normal life.
So what does a number like 200% actually feel like? Well, it's a daily nightmare. It means the price of bread, fuel, bus fare, it's all just skyrocketing. Your paycheck? It basically lost half its value. I mean, imagine getting a 50% pay cut overnight. Not from your boss, but from the economy itself. That's what people were living through.
So with the economy in freefall, the government comes forward with a solution: austerity. And look, this isn't just some fancy political term. It means real, painful cuts. We're talking less public spending, fewer subsidies, basically a dose of really tough medicine for an economy that was, frankly, on life support.
And as you can imagine, this split the country right down the middle. On one side, you had supporters saying, look, it's a bitter pill to swallow, but it's necessary. We can't keep living on borrowed money forever. But on the other side, critics were calling it what they saw as economic cruelty, a policy that hit the poor the hardest while the rich were protected. This wasn't just a debate, it was the setup for a huge political battle.
So this whole economic debate, it became the one and only issue in the upcoming election. This wasn't just politics as usual. It was a high-stakes gamble for the entire nation, a real test of endurance for the people of Argentina.
And the choices could not have been clearer. You had the ruling coalition arguing that these tough measures were the only way to stabilize things and bring in foreign investment. And then you had the opposition, who called it a flat-out betrayal of the people, something that would just crush the middle class and make inequality even worse. So voters had two completely different paths to choose from.
And, you know, this quote from a voter in a Buenos Aires suburb just says it all. We've tried everything. Maybe honesty, even if it hurts, is better. Wow, that really hits you, doesn't it? It just speaks to this profound exhaustion, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, a painful truth is better than another empty promise.
And that right there gets us to the core of this whole thing, what we're calling the austerity paradox. See, people weren't really voting for pain. They were voting against chaos. For so many, the fear of complete economic collapse was actually scarier than the guaranteed hardship of austerity.
But you know, big picture political logic doesn't put food on the table. And this quote from a nurse named Maria Lopez just brings it all home. She said, "I understand why they're doing it, but I can't afford meat anymore. My children only eat pasta." That captures the struggle so many were feeling, understanding the why on one level, but living with the heartbreaking reality every single day.
And make no mistake, this wasn't some fringe decision. The voter turnout was nearly 75%. That's huge. It shows that people were deeply, deeply invested in this choice. They showed up, they voted, and they made a powerful collective statement about the direction they were willing to go, even if it was a reluctant one.
Of course, the whole world was watching, and this take from an economic analyst really sums up how it was seen from the outside. Argentina has learned that populism buys applause, not prosperity. A lot of people interpreted this as a major shift, maybe even a sign that voters in the region were getting tired of grand populist promises and were starting to demand some hard-nosed fiscal reality.
So, the decision was made. Argentina chose the tough path. But now the truly hard part begins. The government is basically walking a tightrope, trying to keep a very, very delicate balance. So, how do you keep people on board? Well, the government's plan isn't just about cuts. They've promised to do a few things to soften the blow. First, wage adjustments to keep up with inflation. Second, targeted social support for those who need it most. And third, and this is a big one, serious anti-corruption reforms to prove that everyone is making sacrifices, not just the regular folks.
Okay, so what's the timeline here? Well, pretty much everyone agrees the next 2 years are going to be rough. No way around that. But If the plan holds, the hope is that in the medium term, inflation starts to come down and the peso stabilizes. And long term, the goal is to rebuild investor confidence. But you can see that question mark there because it's a huge if.
And that brings us to the great risk in all of this. Public patience isn't infinite. People voted for this because they were hoping for a better future, even if it meant short-term pain. But if that pain just keeps going and going, with no light at the end of the tunnel, well, that hope could turn into anger fast.
So we're left with this one giant question. Is this austerity plan the bitter medicine that finally cures Argentina's chronic economic problems, or is it a poison that will only make things worse? Argentina made a truly sober choice, trading easy promises for a hard reality. And now, the world watches to see how it plays out.